That looks right. There we go. Hello. Welcome to Feedback Friday Art Edition. I'm your host, Jacob. My audio is working now. That's important. How you all doing? Welcome to the stream. Hello, hello, hello. Ooh, map invite? Let me grab that. Where are we going? Huh. Hopping on. Thank you. Here, have some dust. All right, so today we're doing art, and it's gonna be a curious one. Um, I don't really know how I'm gonna do this one. It probably won't be a long one. Hopefully, I got a lot of stuff I want to get done, and the stuff I want to get done, I'm not gonna stream because it's very spoilery. Good fun stuff. But today, I have been challenged with an item. It's a cheese, actually, uh, and so I think this is like payback for all the times the art team would create some kind of ridiculous trap that's like, what is this thing? I don't. It looks cool, looks really neat, but like, what it do? How does it work? And it's like, good luck writing a description for that. So now I get to illustrate a cheese that is plotting. I wish I had like a button that could do that, like hamster or whatever that small animal. Dun dun dun. Very old meme. Um, yeah. So plotting paneer is kind of like the name right now. Who knows if it'll stick? Um, but all the cheeses for this have been very uh, interesting and challenging. They're very like symbolic and kind of like idea as opposed to physical thing. Like they themselves are a metaphor. So I'm going to be creating plotting paneer, um, and it will involve an item that drops. Uh, I don't want to like get too into details because this is still being developed and stuff. So I don't really want to kind of like, be like, this is exactly how it's going to work, and these are what they're called, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it does have like an ingredient, and the ingredient is plot hooks. How do you draw a plot hook? As a physical thing that you collect. Um, so that's my task today. So yeah, I think it is a case of kind of like, a little bit of revenge for all the times we'll like create this. What is that? How do I like? What do I name something that looks, you know, very cool, but like don't understand what it does. You know. So yeah, there's a good bout back and forth. But yeah, so we shall concept together. I'm gonna need your assistance. Feed me some ideas on how I can illustrate a kind of like plot hook based plotting paneer cheese. And paneer is like a very soft, crumbly, kind of fresh cheese. Very, very tasty. I enjoy it. I'm surprised we haven't actually done a paneer cheese yet. Um, but yeah, like right now, my brain is just like, oh, maybe there's like hooks coming out of it, which literal um, could work. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's the right idea. Um, so yeah, let's honestly just kind of jump into our drawing program. This is Clip Studio Paint. If anyone's new here, I tend to illustrate in that now. Um, yeah, are the cheese's characters salting paneer. Um, yeah, what is a plot hook? Okay, so like a plot hook would be like in writing, it's kind of like the crux of what really captures the reader's interest. The thing that like the story is wrapped on. Um, it's like the main kind of like theme that really drives the actual like kind of you know the tale and stuff. So like a plot hook's a very powerful, very kind of like captivating thing. Um, can also be a literal hook for illustrative purposes, I guess. But yeah, like how do you draw a plot hook? Um, so yeah, yeah. Oh, paneer is so good. Okay, instantly makes you think of shiny or glowing. Okay, I like it. I like it. No, this is not a new base for Folklore Forest Finale. This is our base template file. This is just kind of like the area that the cheese sits on, and we just have a bunch of different bases that you can kind of like test it on. We have perspective grid lines to kind of give us an indication of the angle you want it at. So this is for just kind of like illustrating cheese purposes. Um, I guess we have like the hint of a trap. I assume that's like slumbering boulder. Uh, yeah, and knock the perspective down a bit. Oh yeah, paneer and a curry. Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right. Well, it is a powerful cheese in terms of kind of like its tier, right? So often we'll have kind of like you have our base cheese, which is kind of like your cheese you can get from the cheese shop that you can use kind of more globally. Not everywhere, but a lot of places. So like your like brie and gouda and stuff like that, super brie. Those are all kind of like your base tier cheese, your standard bait, and then often we'll have kind of like the location cheese that is kind of like the first tier of a mechanic. And, depending on what the area is, this is a very different thing. Very different kind of like mechanics across them, as you well know. But this area does have a few tiers, and this one's kind of on a higher tier, so I do want it to be kind of like pretty impressive looking. Um, so that'll be a factor to think about as well when we kind of like start trying to illustrate this. Um, Classically, I'm used to paneer being kind of like these cubes, right? Uh, and if we have it like floating, that's already kind of like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Um, it's very crumbly. If we take like little nibbles out of it, it'll kind of like show that crumbly texture, right? Maybe there's like bits of it floating around to kind of just show how like powerful it is or something. So that kind of could be cool. Um, and then also like if we're crafting it out of an ingredient, which we are, um, it's often not a bad idea to like consider what that item is and how it works into the design of the cheese. Um, so it could be the case that like normally paneer is like a white cheese, and maybe like the plot hooks have a bit of color, so maybe that color gets infused into this cheese. Um, hmm. I do think it having hooks would make sense, kind of like in terms of, you know, not the actual cheese, right? Because it is a very soft cheese, so it's kind of like a wonderful little contradiction there. Um, but that could kind of like give it a little more, you know, epicness, make it look more tense and powerful. I don't want it to look evil. Right now it's got horns. But if it's more like hooks, I mean, hooks tend to be kind of vicious, so it might be hard to make it look innocent. Color and lighting can do some things for that. But I don't know. Let's see. Definitely becomes less Paneer-like. It does. It does definitely seem more powerful. And with a name like Plotting Paneer, it definitely does seem like it could be a mischievous cheese, mind of its own or something. All right. Again, names, placeholders, by the way. So just to be clear on that, because I use a name on stream does not mean that is the official, what it will be in game, as we are still developing the area. Generally, when we're producing the artwork, that is still early stages, right? Things aren't kind of like fully plugged in and balanced necessarily. So, yeah. I think there might be something here with this, though. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, like, we love our whimsy, we love our puns, so, and alliteration, very much. Lots of that. Uh, yeah. So something like this could work. I kind of like the idea of there being, like, gold in it to kind of make it look really, like, you know, gold can make things look more kind of elevated and powerful or intense and special. Um, so like if the plot hooks themselves are like these golden hooks or something like that, that could be an idea. Because they are challenging to acquire, I would say. You gotta work to obtain them um, in the game. So that could be an idea. That hands placed together. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, I do think that's not a bad idea. Hmm. Could do that with like the hooks even, but I'm gonna see if plotting hands. Interesting. Interesting. I like. Okay, I don't know if this will work, but like, let's just kind of steeple some kind of like cheese fingers, if you will. I don't know if this is gonna work. This is again like it's such a weird out there idea. It warrants a weird out there solution, I think. So now challenge will be making this look like paneer, um, and cheese. Just I want it to just be like, yep, that can be eaten. I guess. Why? A lot of the cheese doesn't necessarily have that, so maybe it's not a big requirement. Um, it's gonna have like Mickey Mouse gloves going on here, since it'd be like white paneer, right? I don't know if I'm gonna go in this direction, but I just because it's a suggestion, I do try to illustrate the suggestions, um, especially when I'm amused by them. This one amuses me. So let's try. Okay, so I think it should be like a block still. It's the base of it. I do think it also could still be floating if I can make that fit. Okay, let's try a little bit of shading to like help our brains understand what we're looking at. Okay. Eh. It's very plotty. Excellent. Smithers, release the hounds kind of vibes, so not terrible. I did not expect to like it as much as I do. I don't know if I'll go in the direction, but it is kind of working. Kind of. It's in the back pocket. Good suggestion. All right, so what else can we try? I don't know. It is kind of winning me over. We'll see what the art team thinks of it if I don't come up with a better idea. Okay. Also, we need to consider it being a very small item because it'll be like a HUD element. It's going to be on your trap. You know, you want it to read from, fair distance. So I'd have to kind of get the silhouette just right on it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want it to look like it's praying either, right? It's got to be more like fingers kind of like yes, as opposed to, you know, gotta have them more like hooked, I suppose. So, maybe I'll try that again. And let's keep that as a little reference. But let's try and get more hooked fingers. Okay. The like hands blade open a bit more, maybe. Um, kind of probably want to bump up this perspective grid and respect it a bit more. All right, let's try that. Hide that for now. Okay. Yeah, the coloring stage I think would assist that too. You're right. Generally, you can really kind of like control things when you get to the rendering side. So I think so as well. But I think overall the silhouette needs to be kind of like really strong, especially since it's like a small, potentially very small item. Um, the stronger I can make that silhouette read, the better by far. So let's kind of like get these like little hooks, which Paneer does not seem like it would be very good at doing kind of sharp, smooth. It's not the kind of texture that you would necessarily assume it could pull off. But you know, we got weird magical cheese, so let's go for it. Alright, and then these are kind of tilting back. So these are much more kind of like hook-like and plotting-like, a little more sinister. Okay, so I feel like there's a few things that are kind of like working, right? So let's move this finger forward. I think at least one of the fingers should be kind of like clinking together, right? Like that's part of the joy of this kind of like pose, is the whole like kind of thing. So you gotta have them doing that. All right. But they are like kind of hook-like, which I think will be beneficial for when we have to create these items that is a part of it, right? So let's get this finger pushing forward and clinking. They're kind of like seaweedy looking right now, which maybe is a good thing. Don't want it to necessarily look like human fingers or anything like that, right? Um, okay. Low audio. Okay, sorry about that. I can try and talk more directly into the microphone. It's currently set to max volume. I think I'm also kind of mumbling to myself. Let's see. I know I've had to mess with this setting before. I'll just talk louder, I think. All right. This finger. I suppose there'd be thumbs too. Yeah, it does. It does actually have a decent plotting vibe to it, right? Like it looks like this cheese is up to something. So, you know what? I think that's actually good. I think that's I wasn't expecting this to be where the mark is, but I think that it is. Um, Mainly like because it has these kind of hook looking things, right? So I think that will actually help out. Who made this cheese? Who's the cheesemonger that created this? Hmm? Who done it? I guess other than us. See, I get to blame you guys, chat, for feeding me this idea. So I'm not responsible for this finger-licking good cheese. I mean, we can do a lot with this description on this now. So we thank you, I guess. Okay, it does look like it's plotting. So whatever it's up to. Okay, I do want to like float it up a bit. I don't know why, but I really want it to be a floating cheese. I enjoy floating cheeses. Light and airy. It's a soft, light cheese, you know? Let's demonstrate that by making it hover naturally. Just putting some shading on here so that I can kind of like give a little bit of a concept as to the three-dimensional qualities of this cheese. Okay, so you know what? I actually don't hate it. It looks like it's plotting. It maybe doesn't look very paneer-like yet, but I think that that is something that the rendering can figure out. I think that it should read very small. It conveys some fun ideas. I think it's whimsical and weird. And it should allow for, you know, some kind of like physical hook item, I think. The plot hook. Are these two separate pieces kind of like clinking together? I feel like maybe I should make it more of that cube to kind of make it a little bit familiar with Paneer. So I'll return to that. Obviously, the rendering, I'll be able to kind of give it the right look, but, you know, any assistance to kind of differentiate it and kind of make it make sense off the bat is a good thing. So, yeah, that's like definitely up to something. This cheese is got some plans. Okay, I think that works. I like how ridiculous it is. Thank you, chat, for the direction. Anyone who was like, this cheese creeps me out, you can blame them. Wonderful audience. Excellent. Yeah, I think this will be a fun one to do a description for now. Excellent cheese, yes. All right. Oh yeah, a finger just crumbling off. That would happen, I think. It's not a sturdy cheese. Yeah. This might be a fun one to render. Okay. So with that, I actually feel like I want to figure out what the item is that crafts this. Because like I think that that is actually strong enough to kind of like sit on and kind of like try to make work. But part of like completing that job to kind of like get to a finished piece will be kind of like determining, okay, what do you craft it out of? Because that'll do things like influencing the actual like textures and if there's any like extra kind of element I want to include in it. So with that, I'm going to use the same file for now, honestly. Um, I'll save them as separate files and kind of adjust the actual file when I need to, but for now I think this way we can kind of jump back and forth between them. No, actually let's not do it that way. Alright, I'm going to save this, and I will actually create a new file. Go for 1,000. Okay. And we're gonna time-lapse record, save as. Okay, plot hook. So what we can do is put this off to the side to appreciate. And let's see what we can do. Any possibility of having a few cubes in a small serving bowl but drenched in gravy? I mean, that's what I want in real life, yes. Okay, plot hook, everybody. If you were to create a plot hook as an item that you could collect, how would you do that? What should I draw? An actual hook? An old crusty hook. Again, you know, like it's an item. I want it to, especially as like a cheese ingredient, that would be like that little kind of like, you know, the grub on the HUD or whatever, right? I want it to be small and have a strong silhouette, right? So, I mean, a hook is simple. Um, hmm. But like, it's not too whimsical, right? Like, what could we do? Help me out, because this is something that I'm like, I don't know. Like a plot hook is very much like literary or story based, right? So, what can we do with a hook to make it more like part of a story? Um, Thinking of kind of this cheese and the fingers on that. I want to integrate these together somehow. I mean, it could just be like a more interesting and unique looking hook, right? eye itself could be this wrapped thing, almost like condensed creativity, right? Get that like spiral thing going. It's at least a little more interesting. If it was made of paper, or a quill. I guess it could be like a quill, right? That would make sense. Right? That's a little more. Oh yeah, that's a thing for writing. A plot hook. Okay. Yeah? All right, good. I was like, I feel like this is something that the chat would have given me before I figured it out, but there we go. Same time idea works for me. But yeah, the quill. I think the quill is a good enough kind of like way to communicate that concept. Okay. Yeah, I don't hate it. I think it could look nice if it's like gold and something simple paired together. What would work for the pannier? I think gold could look nice. Yeah, feather on the top is not a bad idea, right? It is more quill-like that way. Like a little puff that fishermen. Yeah, that's actually a good point. They would kind of like create a lure that would be kind of like, it's supposed to be some kind of weird insect with, you know, bits. Okay, let's try that. So yeah, let's turn it more into a feather quill kind of thing. Plus this will look cooler, having like feather colors and stuff. Okay. Just have this like curl into a loop that your fishing line would go through or whatever if you were to use this for fishing. I think we can have that quill tip come to more of a point. Okay. I mean, honestly, this is way better than I expected in terms of just kind of like, yep, that's a way to symbolize that. That's exciting. Okay. And this is coming together way easier than I thought. All right, I can work with that. Sweet. Have that kind of like flare out a lot more. Yeah, I think it'll be nice to have like really nice coloring on the fletching, if you will. Is this an arrow? Um, yeah, the feather portion could be a nice thing to kind of like add to kind of like the readability on the HUD. Like, oh, this is these colors, even though it's very small. Um, Tie that with the cheese. That'll be a good thing. Flatten that out more. Yeah. Okay. I think this is going to work. I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to figure this one out. This sounds very difficult, but hey, there we go. One thing I will admit is Feedback Friday is almost always going to be a fairly decent art day. I tend to give myself the most difficult challenges for it because I know that either with, like people hanging out, they'll give me like really, really good ideas, or just because I'm constantly just muttering to myself, I'll kind of chew through concepts fast, or do a lot more kind of like explorative sketching than I might in the kind of little vacuum. Um, so I tend to have good art days because I really kind of like go through ideas rapidly and end up being able to kind of like land on a thing much sooner. But often, a lot of the time, it's because you all have a lot of really good ideas, and it's fun to explore those, and those often lead to something. Even if we don't use the idea directly, there's almost always some kind of like, okay, that influenced this, and I tried a thing that made me think about another thing. Then we combine those two ideas, and boom, suddenly we're creating something that's totally unique that I never would have figured out at all on my own. So excellent. Excellent. All right. So if we were to kind of like bring these together, uh, we have like the kind of like curling and stuff from this hook, which is good. And then I think we can get like maybe an iridescence on the feather, like a nice light feather with some kind of like colors, sparkling through it, and then like a golden quill or something like that, and then have those colors in the pannier with like maybe the feathers kind of like fluttering off of it in some part to kind of like communicate that. Could be good. Yeah. Smithers, fetch me my hook. Excellent. And re-release sounds. Yeah. Yeah, Lovecraftian vibes, right? What can I say? It's it's plotting something. Um, I mean, it is very much a quill, but it's a hooked quill. Therefore, it's a plot hook. Oh goodness. Could you imagine trying to use this thing? Be like, okay, let me just add more ink to the, and just kind of like hold it up to my, kind of dip it like a bent spoon into the ink, and then you're like writing. Like you can only write on very short objects because it is hooked in on itself. I mean, maybe it's like some kind of like poke and stick kind of tattoo thing you can use on your fingers. I don't know. It does not seem like a very good writing implement, but I don't think that matters. Well, it definitely doesn't. I mean, if we took all the things in MouseHunt as just kind of like sensible and literary and literal, um, yeah, no, things wouldn't work so good. Uh, there are like engraving bits that have like a little like just because like for engraving like the inside of a ring and stuff, you need to be able to kind of like get through the band. Um, so maybe this is something like that. You're writing a message on the inside of a little ring or something like that. Could work. Pen ear. Oh no. Oh goodness. We've gone too far with the puns. Too far. We need an art update for the rune mat. Looks outdated. Oh yeah, that one definitely is old. Very, very old looking art. I agree. I mean, there's a lot that I want updated, but we definitely don't have art bandwidth to be doing that at the moment. Um, as it is, the art team is like trying to stay on target, and it's a lot of work. We got a lot of characters and lots of cool art that we are creating, so no time to do repaints, unfortunately. But lots of really exciting, cool stuff to come. Very excited for it all. Yeah, I agree though. Like that definitely is a very old and very flat and static looking art asset. I feel like that was even illustrated in Illustrator, a vector drawing program, which was a very brief stint in like how I illustrated items for MouseHunt. I did use Illustrator for like the hunter's hammer. There is like some kits and baskets, I think, and a few items. Like, it was around the Huntington, like the first Huntington. Um, there was like cheese puffs or something like that that the Breagull would drop. I think. Let's see. Yeah, very old. Yeah, I think. Well, it might have been an Illustrator file. But yeah, it's very flat, and I mean, it's not terrible, but like doesn't fit in my opinion. But yeah, like a lot of the art back then was very varied in style and sensibilities, so just kind of par for that course. As was figuring out a lot as an artist at the time. Alright, I'm going to send a little screenshot of these to the art team and get feedback on them. Yeah, the one I'm using right now is Clip Studio. It's Clip Studio Paint EX. So I wanted to be able to do like animations and stuff. And there was a pretty good sale when I bought it. They do like Cyber Monday, Black Friday, or whatever. At least once a year, it's like half off or whatever. It's a good program. But yeah, you can get it like I think you get pretty much everything you need with the free version or the cheap version. This one's like the earlier versions. I think they have newer ones. I haven't upgraded to those. Okay, so far the art team is into these ideas. That's good. All right. Any future Rift auras? Not that I can talk about. I imagine that they might exist in the future. Alright, so art team seems to dig them. One thing I am going to try and do is keep it relatively simple for the plot hook. And try and make sure, of course, like number one, I want it to read very well as a very small HUD element, like very small. Number two, I'm going to try and avoid it looking too much like any other quills that exist in game. Okay. Fountain pen. Sorry, just talking with the art team about the quill. There is a suggestion to like make the cheese fancier because it's a higher tier cheese, right? And one idea is to add rings to it. So I'm like, oh, that's a fun idea. Why not? Um, Mm. The thing we're discussing right now is the concept that there's already a number of quills that exist in the game. So we don't want it to be too, like confusing by like, oh, here's another quill. Um, so one suggestion is to like lose the feathers, make it more of a fountain pen kind of look, which I think we could make work. I really do enjoy the quill idea. It's very clever and fun, but because we have so many quills going on in the game, it's maybe safer to kind of like avoid that. So if it's more of like a fountain pen, that could be good. And also, like, I think there could be like a really beautiful, almost like a old, polished wood pipe look to this thing where it's kind of got these sloped curves and kind of gets like fatter at one part, and then kind of like has this interesting little kind of wooden loop hook thing, maybe with bands of gold or something. Okay, so I'm going to try that. Duplicate this, and let's knock off these feathers here to make it a fountain pen more than a quill. Now, if it still needs to like go into a loop, I'm not as certain. It could just have a hole drilled through the side. It would be more, you know, how someone would actually make one of these. I feel like curling a pen, the the back end of a pen into a loop would be a lot more complicated a process. So I think what will really make this nice is, okay, so if we have like a good kind of rich mahogany kind of stem or something like that, let's say, and there's like these nice bands. And like this would be kind of like the part that you hold. So there's like a nice grip of some kind, maybe a very figured wood that's highly polished or something like that. That could be kind of nice. Oh, Kelly had an interesting idea. Could try a typewriter key with a hook at the bottom. Hmm. Typewriter elements is an interesting concept. Wouldn't have thought of that one. Okay. It kind of has a worm look to it with the bands as well, which kind of works for it being a hook, right? Um, may not be as kind of like elegant as the feathered quill. I don't know that anyone would be too confused over there being, you know, another quill item, but better to err on the side of caution whenever, you know, stuff is raised as a potential challenge. Okay, so that's potentially a way to do that. It could all just end as more of a kind of classic back of a pen. That it kind of flaring out. Quite as much. Don't know if that reads very well. Maybe it is better with the little hook or the swirly loop. Small barb is where the hand would go. It does look like a vintage pipe. Having a bejeweled fountain pen that looks like it's been sliced up for cheese rings might be fun. All right, so crystal coming in instead of a feather could work. I think so. One of the things that will be a good thing to do with this process will be to figure out, okay, how do we tie these two together? We need the cheese, of course, to like be made of this ingredient. So one of the suggestions from the art team is like make a super bejeweled writing fountain pen thing, and then make it look like you sliced it up and made rings on these fingers out of this bejeweled pen. So I think that's a pretty clever idea. Um, I was assuming we would take kind of like the colors and the textures and kind of like put that into the cheese. So originally I had feathers and stuff coming off the like thumb there, and I'd have like gold and stuff melted through it with like some of the feathery kind of colors. Like I was thinking a very pearlescent kind of coloring, which would keep it still in the paneer kind of like range and tone, which I think would be good. I want it to be like bright and soft still. So I think like a deep dark mahogany kind of like betrays that look. It would no longer look like a paneer if it was like had these like dark kind of veins of, you know, wooden kind of color. So if it's more of like a golden um like, well, maybe like mother of pearl kind of fountain pen, right? Like gold and kind of like pearlescent looking kind of let me duplicate this in case I want to go back to it. Um, but yeah, I like the idea of there being kind of like these rings cut out of it. Could be interesting. But then also it could just be like those textures and colors like melted into it could work too. Um, so let's, I mean, it could be like more of a kind of like shell. Like I like the mother of pearl and gold. I think that would look lovely on the paneer cheese, and um, that could play well. So let's see if this is more flattened out looking. Could be more shell-like, maybe. Do I want it to be shell-like? Maybe I don't. Hmm. This is a tough one. I knew it would be a tough one. But it's a good, fun challenge. I think it'll be, you know, it's gonna be tough to get right, but if we can do it, that'll be very, very satisfying and very helpful because honestly, like, I've been thinking about this for a little while and being like, what in the world can I do for this? And the rest of the art team was like, we don't know. So, but I think we'll get it. I think I'm quite certain, in fact. Okay, I do kind of like the the little curl. It's a little more weird and like fun maybe. It kind of like helps the silhouette to be a little more, interesting than just like a candy cane looking thing, right? Um, but yeah, like I think, and I was talking about like, no, I'll make it really simple and very clean. But now I'm like, yeah, no, there's gonna be like jewels encrusted, and it's gonna have like pearlescent coloring and a filigree carving in it, of course, darling. Um, so yeah, actually, a nautilus-looking shell could look really cool for this. This is where you'd kind of string your line on it, right? It's probably because I was looking at the abalone shells for the last stream I did, um, and I like didn't really end up getting to do the shell as much as I think I wanted to for the character. Like I really love where that character ended up, but I didn't get to kind of like feature the the like shell so much. So not that doing a pearlescent coil is, giving me that either. Does this feel like a fountain pen? I mean, why would it? But if this was straightened out, does this feel like a fountain pen? Maybe. I should probably do a flip to kind of like get a good read on it. Always a good way to kind of check your work, right? Okay, so I think I'm gonna like more aggressively slope this to make it more of an interesting curve. It's got more action to it now, more intent. And I mean a plot hook. That's got intent. It's going somewhere, right? There's more active, alive kind of shape to it, right? Okay, so I think as long as it can be like, oh, that's some kind of writing implement where you can tell a story with this typewriter key. um, I think it'll serve its kind of like purpose in terms of kind of like that part of the storytelling. Um, and then legibility in terms of like, okay, does this silhouette work on the HUD is kind of like actually one of the more important requirements of this. Like, who cares what it looks like? It needs to be identifiable in terms of like when I glance at this, I'm not confused by any other item in the game, right? It is uniquely this thing, whatever that thing is. So that's, I think, kind of its core purpose is to be identifiable. Right now, I think that it is probably going to succeed at that. This kind of coil shape, I think is unique enough. I don't have a glossary of all items in the game in my head, but I can't think of anything else that is immediately kind of like, oh wait, that looks exactly like that thing. So items aren't too bad with that usually. But especially when it comes to like a HUD element, something that is kind of like part of gameplay that you interact with, I think it's important to kind of make sure that that is working. And again, like at a very, very, like as small as it could possibly be viewed, is that going to communicate what it is? And I think with this very, very, very simple silhouette, but like it's unique, I think it does that. So I think that's successful. Um, Now, making it read as a fountain pen, I think, is the next challenge. Um, and I think as long as the tip works and this kind of like shaft is, cylindrical, that's probably the best we can do because there are no pens in the world that look like this, to kind of like pull on instantly in our, repository of this is a thing, um, that I know of. Maybe someone's made this pen already, who knows? But I don't think it's going to be a common thing to look for. Okay, so there's that, and then I think third, maybe second in terms of actual importance, would be how do we kind of bring this item into the cheese and like connect those two together. So I think if the pen is like this pearl looking kind of like shell, um, so it's like got white. Maybe the tip is silver. I think a lot of our quills and stuff have a gold tip, so that'll actually maybe be beneficial. But like I think gold rings on this pearl and silver look will kind of like keep it very high end, classy, which I think is part of the goal to kind of tier up this cheese, and then having those kind of like combine into the cheese. And I do again still like the idea of there being like these rings cut out of it, placed into it. So I think we can make that work. Bobby Duke Arts. I feel like that's someone that I should look up later and be very amused by the very strange creations. Actually, I'm going to look them up real quick now because now I'm very curious and I will forget. A YouTuber. Okay, well, I will look them up later. Okay, so we have, I'd say this is a good start. I'd even go as far as to be like, I could probably start rendering this and feel like we're on track, right? Um, the cheese, I might actually want it to be rendered to kind of render the cheese to kind of decide, oh, this is what I want to steal from it to put into the cheese. So let's actually go there. Let's render this out. As I said, it's probably going to be a shorter stream today. So I'm going to try and get this done on stream. So these are old sketches. This will be the actual render. And let's see, let's go for I guess like a pearl. What would be a good base color? Yeah, they're kind of warm. So yeah, like a gold, orange, tan, kind of like, and then like it has blues and stuff. Like they go all over the range. So something like this is probably fine. sketch down even more. And again, like, we don't really need it to be like super overly rendered because this is just a small item. Now, of course, I do want you to be able to use like Larry Loot Lexicon and take a look at the full image and appreciate that. Because, I mean, we always make everything we can a work of art. And we want you to be able to enjoy it. And we enjoy creating it. So, it's not like I won't render this out in exquisite detail. Yes, darling. But for now, I think I just want to like capture the identity of it a little bit. Don't need to lose ourselves in the rendering yet. You just need enough to kind of like say, here's what we're going to use for the cheese. Because honestly, the cheese is the more important piece of this puzzle, right? The cheese is what you're really going after, what you're really kind of trying to use and create. And it's going to showcase on your trap. Good enough on those curves. Again, not aiming for perfection. Alright, and then the bit itself, I was saying silver could be good because we have plenty of golden quills. Although gold might still be the right choice in the end. Especially if I want to like carve out rings from this onto the cheese hands or something. Who knows though, who knows? Okay, so let's see. Let's actually go like purple for the shadow. So they're like reflective enough to kind of like have a smear of the environment reflecting on them. But like they're not like polished like chrome kind of look to them, right? They have more kind of texture and they're more matte. Definitely get like a pure white highlight on them though, but like a smudgy white highlight, I would say. Right? And then honestly, we do need this to be a white backdrop because MouseHunt items are on a white backdrop until they're on a HUD element, and then it needs to kind of work in all backgrounds. Okay, so I think I want there to be like the floor being reflected. I'm going to turn the sketch down even more now. Actually, I'm going to turn the sketch off to really get like a good look at this. So I don't like how irregular this shape is. I want to smooth it even more. Might turn up my stabilization. 62 is pretty good. What does it do at 100? So there is a like brush setting for stabilization, which basically corrects your stroke after the fact to like lag it behind. So that's how you can get some nice smooth curves when you don't necessarily have a smooth hand. Also, speaking of hand, thank you for the well wishes for my finger recovery. It's actually going well. I would have had an appointment at 10 a.m. this morning to meet with the hand kind of like wellness people. But I decided to cancel the appointment because it is healing fantastically. There is nothing for them to do and look at. It's looking good. Healing up well. I lucked out, I would say, very much. Okay, that's maybe not the curve. I need not worry, it is not my drawing hand that had the injury. Though it is my dominant hand. Interestingly enough, I write and draw with my left hand, but do everything else with my right. So. The dancing pencil. Okay. So it does read as, you know, some kind of pen-ish thing. That's good. Okay, so for to kind of like get more of that pearl look to it, I think we want there to be this kind of like inner glow where it's kind of like reflecting off of itself. And then I think there would be maybe like a gray light kind of reflecting onto the base of it, like onto the bottom from the floor. Less colorful, but lighter. Something like that, maybe. I think that's kind of got a pearl looking look to it. In fact, I'm going to go kind of blue on this side. Maybe a bit of blue on the edge there. I want this to like pop and read well. So let's maybe deepen this with more of a interesting purple. Actually, I'm going to put this higher up here. the purple is just like, I want a different color in here. Maybe even like green. Have found and lost edges on it. So like there's one side of it is like a hard edged color, and then the other is smudged and soft. Just makes it more interesting. Okay, so we have this kind of like pearly look to it. That's not terrible. Let's even get like another. There we go. It feels more organic and, you know, polished pearl with kind of like a few interspersed reflections, I think. Again, because it's like not a perfect polished surface. Like it's kind of smudgy and blurry. Like if you had a you know, spherical pearl and you put it beside a polished ball bearing kind of thing, you know, the ball bearing is just going to be this spherical mirror, whereas a pearl is just kind of like going to fuzzily reflect things around it. So that's at least how I kind of picture the texturing of it, which I think will be useful for the cheese. You know, giving some of that identity to it will be good. But I do want to also kind of create more material. So let's give the quill, or the nib, I guess, some definition. I think part of me wants this nib to kind of like wrap further down and then have something kind of like strapping them together, like a golden band or something like that. And then the gold band could also wrap around the body of the quill. And I think that would be kind of like a nice little elegant thing. So let's do that. You know, keeping it simple, right? As I do. I always listen to my own advice, definitely, and explain where I'm going to go, and then I always just follow what I say, right? I think I'm always contradicting myself on stream. It's just par for the course. All right, so if that would kind of cover over, that'll curl in more like that, I think, which is great. Yeah, I think I like that. Wrong color. That droops down a bit too much. Here I am like, yeah, no, it's going to be viewed very small. We don't need to be too particular with the details. I'm like, I got to get every single curve just right. It's not quite straight there. Got to fix it. One thing I will say is the smoothing is like good in Clip Studio, but there's something a bit weird about the pen interaction that is like, it's 99% of the time exactly what I want it to do, but then like 1% of the time it's just not quite right. But like I've been using it a lot more than Photoshop these days, and when I go to Photoshop I'm like, well, that is like 60% wrong now. So it's better. It's just not perfect yet. And it could be the Huon tablet is like, not quite as good as the Wacom I had, but like it's still excessively good. So it's not a problem. It's just like in some spots it feels like the calibration shifts ever so slightly, so I can't actually draw a straight line. It kind of like gets a little wobble, like a pixel though. So it's like very insignificant, but like it's enough that I know it. And it's enough that it makes me redraw that line and often have to zoom in so that I get rid of that little tiny wobble. It's minuscule, but it's enough that I need to deal with it often. Yeah, I was visiting my folks recently, last week, and I had brought a drawing tablet with me. It's like a nice portable one that Alex owns, and I was using that as like my remote setup so I could work from home or work from my parents' place while I was visiting. Um, and every like fifth time I'd like tap with a stylus, it wouldn't read it. So I'd be like drawing a line and then nothing would happen and I'd have to like redraw that same line. Or even like hitting a hotkey, like hitting my eraser button or it, flipping the colors or whatever. It would just not register like frequently. Like 20% of the time I gave an input, it just didn't listen. So that made drawing very frustrating for that week. Um, so I'm glad to not be dealing with that because that was awful. Like it's bearable, but it's excruciating. When you are used to being able to kind of control a thing and like get your work produced because you can control that thing, when suddenly it's just slightly, being defiant, it is maddening. So yeah, I could never get into like a flow state while I was there, which is very difficult because like I kind of require like entering the flow state to like get to where I need to when I'm working. Um, and I honestly actually often go into the flow state on Feedback Friday Art Edition, even though I'm rambling most of the time. That kind of like occupies that center of my brain, which is the thing that I need to kind of like put into autopilot. Um, so like when I'm working, I'll almost always have something playing on a screen off to the side to just kind of like, you know, just fill up that part of my brain. Just like someone hammering away on something they're crafting or just rambling about whatever science stuff. Or just good tunes. Those are good too. Yeah, if you can't like work off almost muscle memory and just not think about how you're working, it's very hard to kind of like get into a zone where things like kind of become automated almost. You don't think about what you're doing, it just kind of goes. And obviously, like, if you're new to a craft or something, you're not going to have the experience of kind of like working with it where that can just happen. You need to kind of like be able to be comfortable enough with the tool, the medium, to kind of like stop thinking about it, right? That's kind of, at least how it works for me. I don't know. Could be different for everybody, obviously, but that's part of my experience. So yeah, like when you can't just kind of, like have a tool work the way you need it to and not think about what you're doing. Because like when it stops working, you're immediately like, what just happened? my muscle memory has betrayed me, and yeah, you stop being able to kind of like work comfortably. All right, so yeah, I'm thinking of just like adding nice little bands of gold kind of thing, just to fancify it up, and hopefully make it read as a fountain pen. I think having like smooth, almost like speed bumps of a kind of like um, band ring. I don't know what you would call these details. Of course, this is probably why I'm terrible at actually working and paying attention to the chat, is because to kind of get into a zone with my art, I just kind of like don't really think about that stuff. So let me look. Um, very tasty colors. That's good because I do need it to be in a cheese. And that does seem important to make it tasty. Mischievous? Sinister? Fine. Tasty required. Okay, again, this is supposed to be on a pen, so I think the profile of this needs to be quite shallow. You would want it to be able to be something that you could kind of like choose to, hold this portion in your hand or not. If it was too bulbous and kind of like stuck out too much, then I think it would just interfere with your grip, right? Like, we'll take a look at my pen profile here. It kind of like near the end flares out. So, it's not a bad thing that it kind of flares out. So maybe we have a bit of that here. It kind of becomes this like stopper for my fingers where it's like, okay, this is where I register my grip. Like I hold it like right up to that. I don't go over it, but I hold it right up against that. And it does assist with the grip actually. So I think it would make sense if that kind of flares out there. But then the back of it, like at least with mine, it's just a taper, right? Got this nice distal taper out to the end. It's a good shape. I like this shape. It's like a bit fatter, but I find this one comfortable. I've used many different styluses, and thin ones kind of like can tire out my hand more because like you're doing more of a pinched grip, and I find that kind of like I'm kind of flexing these muscles more, whereas if it's a bit bigger, then it's kind of like I can hold it more neutral. If they're too chunky, then I don't like it. But this one I'm used to. It's very similar to previous styluses I had, and those were what I got. I've learned on, and they're thicker than a regular like pencil or whatever, but it's pretty comfortable shape. So I'm gonna base it off that. So flaring out is good. And I think I'm gonna bring this stem in a bit more. might help with the nib to read. Something that is good to do when you're kind of like creating any character or an item for a game or something like that. And this is something that you'll recognize pretty easily because this is a thing we do for the mice, but silhouette. Silhouette is super important for, like, can you identify this thing? Can you understand what you're looking at based off of a silhouette alone? And if you can, awesome. That's huge. So I think that this will work, right? It's a fairly unique shape. I'd say it's distinct. Like, if you don't know what it is, you might not be able to understand it, of course, but I would say that it is fairly successful in being unique. I do kind of want to be able to make this have a little hole in it. I don't think that that makes sense. Logically. And it might actually end up reading worse because of it, but silhouette-wise, these little holes in it are kind of useful maybe. They do kind of communicate a bit more. A good way to do these is to use the masking tool. Now, I'm not actually going to use these silhouettes, so it's actually probably better to assume we're not. But, I mean, when we do things like changing the background, so we might have, let's say, like the background color for the inventory item is like this, neutrally deep green, or like looking at a HUD, that might be useful. What would be a background color for, yeah, like that deep brown. Let's grab that. Okay, so that is like a typical background color for like the HUD item. So I want this to read against that nice and clear, right? So that's a good color to throw it on, actually. All right, so let's keep that color there, actually, and work with it. All right, so I want this to be a silver. I know this probably isn't as exciting as a new character, so I apologize for that. There are still plenty of new characters, obviously, that we will be illustrating together. I just wanted to try and get this piece done because right now we're trying to kind of like get the HUD and such into kind of like a certain state, and this is a part of that HUD. So having this kind of more completed than like a mouse that, it being plugged in doesn't really change how playable it is internally, right? We can just kind of like add those later on, whereas, like a HUD interactable is a little more something that you kind of need to be able to experience. So that's kind of like why this one's become the priority for today. I think if I do little engraving, which I want to because I'm silly, do that on a different layer, just so that I can kind of easily push and pull that. Again, this is a small item. This is not something to lose any time to, because honestly it might actually take away from how good an item it is, because it can kind of add noise if you go too far. But I can't help myself. I just enjoy adding little finessey details like that. I'm glad that you enjoy the process. Like, that's part of the reason why I share it, is because I personally enjoy watching people work their craft. That's literally what I put on as my kind of like background noise to stay focused, is, put on people doing woodworking, leathercraft, anything that's like, something just really fascinating, and I'll just kind of like look over as I work every once in a while and just kind of see how they've progressed. And a lot of the time it's just silently, someone just hammering away, and it's just like tink, 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 which would probably annoy people, but I don't know. I enjoy it. Like when I'm working on my axe commissions, I'll like put up a video of someone doing the exact same thing, and there's no talking. We're just both like tapping away noisily. So it's interesting. But yeah, I appreciate that people, you know, get the same thing I do out of watching other people do stuff like this. So it's good. I like to be the not quite, but somewhat Bob Ross of MouseHunt or something like that. I do love just that art form of just kind of someone speaking about whatever, talking about what they're doing or anything, and just working away, sharing knowledge and their craft. Okay, so I think that the engraving is almost there. I do want to give a little bit of the highlights and stuff just to make those pop a little bit. Again, I don't want to overdo it. It's really easy for this to kind of like become noise and bad. So I just want to pick out a few little edges. Just to make it a little more interesting to look at when you get to look at it up close. Okay, so there's like a little, like just enough that there's like a texture of elegance, right? You're not bombarded by, too much detail. You just know that there's like, ooh, there's some kind of like nice pattern on that. I can't quite see it, but that's fine. Perfectly fine. Yeah, that's about as much detail as I want it to have for that. Okay, so the gold bands, I think those are definitely needing their pass. So let's get something like these. Okay, and then I'll do Add glow might be good with a kind of greeny yellow. Let's try that. Not bad. I'm going to smudge that around a bit. And let's start erasing where we would get some of these shadows, I think. Or not shadows, actually, but like where the environment that it's reflecting would be kind of like darker. So like edges angled towards us and the horizon, I would say, are kind of like where I want those reflections to come from. So something like that. That looks goldish. I think I need more kind of like definition on the pearl kind of texture where it's kind of like contacting these surfaces. They don't feel like they're touching it. Like this purple here gives that feeling. Here, right? Where suddenly the light is occluded. This thing is wrapping over it. Yeah. Feels a little more present. Okay. I think maybe I want some kind of carved texture in this, but I don't think we need to go that far on the details. I think we have enough to kind of go on to the cheese, figure out what is going to work with that, make that happen, and then we can kind of come back and finalize any, details we think it could use at that point. Okay, I think this is going to get a sort of like silver reflection onto the gold, which is only going to take on like the warm elements of those colors. Like it's not going to bring in like a blue from the silver. Okay, so it's not a perfect gold yet, but I don't need it to be. It's fine enough to communicate what I want it to, and let's take a look at it with the white background. That does feel more like pearl because we're in a white environment. This has the kind of like the warm coming out of a white reflection. There's even like the little hints of blues, and I might even get like a little dab of green. Actually, so this might look nice. Let's experiment real quick. I'm going to actually save this item. I haven't yet. Okay, so one of the things that is kind of a fun thing, and I don't do this nearly enough. Actually, I won't clip this yet. So what you can do is you can, whatever drawing program, just like fill a layer with a gray, let's say, and then use filter, and let's do like a, what would be a good one? Blur, nope. Effect, render. Okay, so depending on what the program is, you'd get like a different noise, kind of like filter. And Perlin noise is a good one, I think. Although I want colored noise, so let's see. What would be a good one? Well, I think Perlin noise is maybe the only one that Clip Studio has. So let's try that, and then can I add color noise. Mosaic would be good if it was colored. Okay, I'm going to try a different method. All right, so I have a color brush. What would be the right one? I think triangles. Color Blast might be good. Let's look at the tool here. And let's give it a lot of color. Maybe it's because I didn't have a saturated background. All right, anyways. Spraying effect. Color jitter, that's the one I want. All right, I want it to have 100% color jitter. Maybe it needs to be more. Yeah. And let's do spraying effect. Spray deviation. Particle direction random. 100%. Why is it not spraying all over the place? So this is like one of the powers of Clip Studio. You can really kind of customize brushes much further than Photoshop gives you. Density is good. Is there a secondary brush that's causing this to be restricted? I feel like there should be more. Density is good. Should be more randomly placed, I think. I don't want color mixing. Oh, there we go. It was the brush size wasn't big enough. Okay. This is probably going to be a very slow brush. Well, let's try this out. Okay, so the idea here is I just create noise that is just like all kinds of colors. It's actually not a bad idea for it to be kind of like maybe in a range of some kind. But, so I have like noise of colors here, right? This is like confetti endgame. So now if I do something like mosaic, ooh, they are getting smeared in terms of like bleeding the color. Artistic, can I just smudge these together? This is something that I know how to do in Photoshop. So, okay, not that one either. Maybe I don't have a good way to do it in Clip Studio. These are more of a transformation. Okay, what would happen if I Perlin noise this? Nope, Perlin noise is very much just a black and white, which kind of makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I would have thought mosaic would be better. But it's just kind of like creating pixels that blend them together, but because of the color range, we are smearing into kind of grays because they blend together into that. All right, so we're at 1 o'clock. Normally that would be lunch, but I'm going to try and just do this as one go. Okay, so enough futzing around. What do I do with this? Why do I have this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that into a color layer. I'm going to clip this so it only goes on to the pen base. And I switched it into a color layer. It can work as a hue as well. It's a little more kind of subtle. But I think color is better for my purposes because we get more richness of the color. And basically you just really peel it back down to like a very, very, very low opacity, Like, honestly, like 5% is probably where you would maybe have it normally. Because it being pearl, I kind of want it to be a little stronger. And again, here I am being like, this is going to be a small item. We don't need to go big. Um, so the issue I'm having with this is these are like way too fine a grain. I think I need to make this color blast have bigger particles. More like that. Okay. Now let's see how that looks. I think I did something similar for the opal. The opal base. Alright, so there is kind of like one way to kind of create a little bit more richness of color variance. You can also do things like using a clipping mask to kind of erase that away in areas where you might want it to be more subtle. But one thing I learned was to kind of like apply this to a whole image. So this works a little better, I would say, for like a fully painted piece where there's like an environment and everything, and you kind of shift all the color into one range. So what I would probably do is have my color jitter be a little more restricted. So I'd maybe make it more like 120. So that if I'm like, okay, I want it to be in the greens, I want it to be in the purples, it's the color variance is gonna kind of like be on this half of the color wheel kind of thing. And I think purple would be a good color variant for that. So if I set this to normal and 100%, you can see that this is kind of like restricted from blue to orange, right? We don't get any green in that now. Although green might be good. Maybe like purple to green would be a good kind of like color for this. Then again, maybe the exact opposite would be better, right? Because pearl has like a lot of like warm, even a bit of green. Like this might be the more pearl. I don't think green. But, you know, you can play with these kinds of things to create a little more color harmony. And it's a fun little trick. I recommend trying it out. And of course, like, when it's really going hard, that's, you know, now it looks like it's been in some kind of like paintball fight at a birthday party. So that's probably more where I want it there. Again, trying it out on a background that it's probably going to show up on in terms of HUD. It makes so little a difference that, you know, you can't even really tell necessarily. But it does harmonize it just ever so slightly. Just ever so slightly. Also, with the highlight on the silver here, I want the highlight to be matched on the band, so I should fix that. I'm going to lock this so I stop selecting it when I'm trying to grab a certain color. And let's go back to our main brush. So our lighting is maybe not, you know, fully correct. You know, I have this darker band kind of like pointing towards us, whereas this, it's kind of catching a bit more light there. At any rate, I'm getting very, very, very specific with all these details. I am definitely not needing to do that. I think where we're at is pretty solid. So let us move on to the cheese. Let's swap these. And continue on. Alright, so our paneer cheese. I enjoy this one. It is good. Okay, let's do our render folder. Plotting paneer. And we're going to turn our sketch down. Usually do around 30% is fine. Let's grab just well, actually I'm going to pull up a reference to paneer, because it's always good to have reference to something when you're illustrating it. I always highly recommend doing that. It's very easy to kind of like have a concept of what something should look like in your head, and to totally miss out on a lot of like really useful subtleties that you would get if you were just simply looking at some reference. So definitely not a bad idea to always have that in your pocket and beside you, ready to go. So right now I'm just blocking it in with a kind of, it's not the right color, but it's clear. It has enough contrast that I can see it easily against the sketch and the backdrop. So it lets me kind of like block this in. I think I will have 2 layers going. And this one I will do lighter. Well, I'll do darker. Again, this is definitely not the color we will end with. Just lets me easily block it in. And it's not like a super important one where I'm like really benefiting from these being on separate layers, but it doesn't hurt. Again, what we'll want to do immediately after I've blocked this in is, check the silhouette. It's a good early step when you're kind of like rendering something out and you're kind of like, okay, I've figured out my sketch and I'm going to block in the flats, the linear of the illustration, which is kind of just blocking in, the silhouette effectively. That's when you want to check the silhouette, make sure it's working, because then it's a good stage to make adjustments. You don't have any kind of rendering, don't have any of the lighting kind of like figured out, so your volumes aren't defined. It's easier to make those silhouette adjustments that early on. Also, I do have a Larry link for you all, but in fact, it is a quar. I don't normally do a quar, but Michelle gave me a fun one, so why not? So I don't have the foresight that Dave does to like prepare slides and all that good stuff. So I'm just gonna ask you guys if y'all are here and want to participate in this challenge. Question, answer, reward. What is the highest amount of mobster mice that any hunter has caught? What do you think? Any guesses? Quar. This is the moment Jacob realizes no one is here. You can just start counting up from 1, I know my chat is not the directly engaged and conversing that Dave's is. I definitely don't have that kind of like back and forth the same. And mine drag on. People definitely get a little bored and move on. All right. Yeah, no, I mean that's what I like to do when I'm watching other videos is like when I'm working, it's kind of fun to have someone else working beside you. Actually, a while back my dad like discovered these videos of like on YouTube just people like cleaning their rooms or whatever. And he's like, "What is this?" It's just like quietly someone just cleaning. And I was like, "Oh, that's literally for people like me where you're just like I find it useful and more enjoyable if there's someone else doing the same thing beside me in that sense." And they like came out during like the pandemic kind of thing where it's just like clean your room with me kind of thing. I was like, that's actually pretty clever. I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I don't think he quite got it. All right, so I'm going to turn the sketch down more. But I'm also going to do the silhouette check. Bam. Okay, so already I can see there's like a little pinhole there. Didn't fill the silhouette in completely. But looking at this, I'm like, yeah, okay, so that's like a noodly looking block, right? So it looks kind of like a cube. Maybe I can assist that with some of the angles and shapes of things. So I want that to like read as a crumbly cube on the bottom, which that feels a little more appropriate for. And then these look like noodly fingers, up to no good. They're plotting something. Yeah, I think I can see what's going on with these. The fingertips here get a little bit muddled. They're not as clear, right? And I think that this finger kind of confuses this element here. So if this kind of sloped up more and this back one was like, we're going to grab this color, okay. If this back one was tucked away further away like this, and it like somehow didn't interfere, that would be a little more clear. I think I need these ones to steeple together, like over here more so, right? Something like that. Hmm. Okay, let's look at it without that. Okay, I think that's getting there. All right. No guesses for the number of mobsters caught. Who? Well, not who, but how many of the most mobsters? What is the highest catch amount for the mobster mouse? I shall tell you. It is 15. 15 mobsters is the highest amount that have been caught by any hunter. Honestly, I thought it would be more, but there is like a kind of internal cooldown for when you catch a prize mouse. I think it's something like 120 days for the mobster mouse. Who's a tricky one? I have 10. I have 10 mobsters. I thought I would have more, having played since the beginning. But no. It's a difficult and elusive one. I'm thinking this back finger, I actually want to try something. Let me grab this. And I'm going to chop it off and keep it. I'm going to put a layer behind that. We're going to try this finger being like way back here. Let's see. Is that more confusing? I think that's more confusing than that. I could potentially have these fingers also come together, right? It's maybe, or they're very close to clinking. That might be better. So let's duplicate this whole folder and just see what we get if we try that. So if this one is a little more coming forward, and then this one is a lot more. Like that. Maybe I'll meet them. Yeah. All right. Now that you know the answer is 15, I should probably share the Larry link as the reward. Gotta make sure it works first, you know. Claim it to make sure it's a good one. It works. All right, copying link, putting it in the chat now. Boom. Larry link. Get your 3 gilded charms from Larry the Friendly Knight. Yeah, I know. I honestly, I expected like more than 17, but he's tough. He's tough. Tricky mobster. Okay, let's take a look at that silhouette again. There we go. I think that now, perhaps, reads as effectively as I need it to. Oh, maybe this one should be more floaty. I don't know. Tricky. I mean, that's pretty good. It's very creepy. Okay. So, I think I'm happy enough with this. I think as I render it, I'm going to be like, I need to move this. I need to change that. So we'll get there. All right. Yeah, and the plot hooks, like maybe we do want to kind of like put a little more fancy detail on them. Do I like this more than this? That is decently strong. I think maybe if those are just a little bit different. Let's see. I think the overlap of the fingers this way is maybe more interesting. And again, I think that silhouette is pretty strong. The like hook and curling of those fingers is pretty good too, though. Like maybe if this just has like a slight gap there. That's decent too. Perhaps even better. Yeah. I think I like this one better now. So that's fine. Yeah, let's go with this. All right. So let's go back to a paneer reference. Very white cheese with a kind of like soft, warm, kind of inner glow. It's very much a kind of translucent kind of cheese almost. So let's start with a very merge that together. This is gone. That's nothing there. Okay. So let's turn off this layer between. We don't need perspective lines, and Okay. I think one way to do this would be to actually do a layer on top of this folder. So this folder would be good for kind of blocking in my shadows on the fingers. But then like an overall kind of light highlight kind of pass over the whole thing. I gotta clip it. There we go. Turn off the sketch. There you go. Kind of want the sketch there, but like not everywhere. It's distracting on those fingertips. Okay. So the light kind of pouring between them there. And I think it needs to be an even more pure white in a lot of places. So I'm going to do a whole other layer. Kind of using the same technique where I do an entire kind of pass of the light and then erase away where that light doesn't necessarily get to. It's a good quick way to get effective lighting on things. Okay, and then below these, I'm going to get my subsurface color happening. So we're going to get like a nice warm yellow orange kind of thing happening. And this is going to be very saturated and really kind of like only happening at the edges of a highlight where the light is pretty strong and kind of like coming through the surface of this cheese. I'm going to use my gentle brush, in fact, which is a very low opacity, very fuzzy and soft, no hard edges kind of thing. And since the fingertips are thinner, there's more opportunity for the light to pass through. And I think I'll do this as a lighten, no, screen, no, overlays, good, overlays good. Turn off the sketch, and let's, I think the base color does need to go darker now. Because I should start with it being in like, okay, what does it look like in shadow? If I were to look at a paneer cheese in like shadow, but it is still an ambient lighting, what would that look like? So here's my sketch. I'm going to move this up here. That's fine there. Never mind. this as its own clipped layer. Alright, my shadow's gonna be in, let's say, kind of like a gray area. Yeah, definitely not. We're still gonna be quite warm. Okay, same with this one. All right. And remember, we're trying to kind of like render this pass as if it's like it has no direct light. It's just kind of like in a dim room with just kind of like whatever ambient lighting exists from the environment, you know, like a distant window, but not landing directly on it. It's just kind of the color of the room or color of the sky. We want the shadows to be kind of like at play here. So how deep do these shadows go in this environment? Now I like the idea of this floating, so we're not necessarily getting a floor shadow like where, you know, it's directly on the surface of the ground. So you're getting that blocked light right at that edge. There's a bit more kind of ambient color and light coming from the right. Oop. And keep that nice and soft. Probably should have just done this as a layer up here. Maybe I still will. Combine these, move them here. I'll turn that one off. Yeah. Thought it would be beneficial to have them separated out, but I don't think that's necessary. Okay, our deepest shadows are going to be like in these creases down here, I'd say. Again, I really need to just think about it like, all right, I want deep shadows. I want it to be like the darkest possible portions of this cheese. That's what I'm trying to render right now. Because, boom, I'm going to turn on the light, right? And that's going to blast away these shadows when that happens. Let's turn off the sketch. Should this one maybe be a lighten? Or a screen? Or an overlay? Overlay might be better. Yeah. Got some cheesier colors. Oh, thank you, JL. I do enjoy streaming art. It's always a kind of interesting challenge. Keep it interesting and entertaining and hopefully educational too. For anyone who's just kind of chilling but curious, feel free to ask any questions, give suggestions. It's all welcome here. So yeah, right now I'm just kind of gonna play around with the light, see what I can get out of just trying to create a paneer cheese look and texture. This strange mottled fingers curled in anticipation. What do they know? Yeah, so it's kind of a weird context, right? Like, what in the world am I watching? So, for anyone who has tuned in more recently and is totally confused, I do not like begrudge that. I think that's very appropriate. It's a strange one today. We are creating together um, plotting paneer. It's a very soft cheese, and it is made out of plot hooks, which was a very curious thing to try and figure out. So the idea is this is like um, a fountain pen with like a pearlescent kind of shell, and then you turn those plot hooks into a plotting paneer cheese. This is a very MouseHunt uh, journey in terms of like what um, we do that. We do very weird and strange and whimsical, but also like potentially confusing. But you just gotta go with it, man. Just accept it. It's fine. It's just MouseHunt. That's kind of where this is at. Honestly, it like basically the prompt was, create a plotting paneer cheese. Okay. I think I got that with this. Now draw a plot hook as a, like the idea of the story idea, like the concept plot hook, right? And, I think we actually figured out something that is like a physical representation of that, you know? Um, so I'm happy enough with it. Again, it's like such a challenging thing to kind of like illustrate that I was like, well, if I'm gonna do this poorly, I at least will do it with an audience where they can witness that, but then I can blame them and be like, you're the one who fed me this idea. And I was just working with what you told me. I take no blame in how bad this is. Not at all. That was my strategy. But yeah, so plotting paneer, I think it's starting to work. We're gonna like steal bits of the plot hook to kind of like mix into this cheese to kind of like make it connect together somehow. Somehow. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today. Hope you're into it. It's a weird one. But, it's fun to do a weird one every once in a while. Let's get a little more of that warmth in these fingies. These devious plotting fingertips. These digits of doom? Dexterous digits of doom. Are they deceitful? Delicious, at least. Delinquent fingers. Alright, so that's where we're at. It's a curious one today. So I don't know. Hopefully that's kind of like got a bit of paneer vibe. I think it needs to be more crumbly. So like the transition of light here, I would probably give it a little more crunch, right? Get a lot more of this kind of like the edge of that highlight is kind of dancing around this texture, right? So that's a little more crumbly, maybe. Again, we can also deal with the silhouette. So I'm just going to flatten that out. They don't need to be separated now. Right? Silhouette is a very excellent communicator of texture if you take the care to show what that surface looks like. Right? So that's more crumbly cheese now. Yeah. So, basically, devious, potentially evil cheese. I don't think it's evil. I think it's just up to no good. Um, so that's fun. I think it's just got like some clever ideas. Maybe not wicked, just very orchestrated. Maybe. I don't know. How do you get into the mind of cheese? Again, just creating more of that texture language by playing with that outer silhouette. Crumbly cheese, right? If you do that to the silhouette, suddenly the whole thing feels like that edge. Like thin spots. It's not firm enough for that. It's plotting how to best attract a mouse and still survive. A real conundrum. Yeah, the cheese. It's quite a pickle. Quite a pickle this cheese is in. looks like it knows exactly what it's in for. And it has a button that can release the hounds. All according to plan. Mm. Oh, if it had a piece of cheese on it, it would think it was opposing it. Hmm. 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 Okay. Give that a save. Let's give it a flip. And also something I haven't done for either of these, which is important to do, will be to look at it in grayscale. It's good to kind of like get a read on how like well it communicates without color, right? So like, is that clear? I think it's not bad. Not bad there. Let's do the same for this one. Grayscale value check. Again, not terrible. Take a look at it with like a darker background. Again, not terrible. Acceptable. Okay, plot hook. Pretty happy with that. I think I'll probably play around with it a bit more. I think the gold bands could be better. I kind of feel like maybe there's some kind of like detail and texture, like ornate kind of like gems or something like that, that could just kind of push it to where it needs to be. Um, but this plotting cheese, oh, it's so devious. I think it works. Not terrible. Taking a look at the silhouette again. It's good. It doesn't have the floating quality that I kind of want. To do that, I'm going to want to kind of like drop a shadow below and like have more of these kind of crumbles below it. And like, I don't know, maybe even give a glow underneath or something. Plotting paneer, yes. Look at it. Scheme. But yeah, so one of the things that's missing at the moment is the actual kind of like, oh, that's how these two combine, right? Like, where is this plot hook, this pen in this kind of cheese? So one idea from the art team, and I think I'll try it out, would be to kind of put rings on these fingers that are kind of made out of that like plot hook. So let's see. This would be like a layer above. Let's put that all into a folder. like being able to kind of drop this silhouette on it anytime I want, but I do not need it to be clipped to the fingers for these rings. So we got like the gold rings and pearlescent ring, right? We also have a bit of that silver from the nib. So let's just drop some rings on it. If you like it, put many rings on it. Many rings made out of fountain pen, I guess. Makes sense. Our game makes perfect sense. It is a logical world we have created. Makes good, logical, clear. Definitely not strange in the least. Let's give it like a golden thumb ring. I kind of want the nib to just be laying in the palm of it or something like that. Okay. So let's try this out. Again, pearl gets kind of fuzzy. Not quite like super sharp reflections. Let's get some like nice light blues in there too. And I think it'd be a little more on the kind of like kind of, I don't know, pinky, purpley kind of shadow. I just want there to be like some nice bold colors happening there. So let's get like some good yellow from like the cheese glowing up into it, right? That'll be good for the gold. I could get like little bands on the those rings on the actual plot hook item. Could look nice with something like that. There you go. So those are kind of like popping out as kind of like, ooh, that's a little more fancy and elegant. But again, I think if it was floating, it'd be even more special and fancy and elegant and high tier. So let's float this cheese on up. Wob, 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 wob. All right. Let's get a drop shadow under that. Now the difficult thing is every trap and base we kind of light just a little bit differently, you know? We have kind of like a consistent identity of there's generally light coming from the top right. But what we do with it definitely kind of like varies from trap to trap, and you know, we often just kind of like loosely play with those ideas and then do our own thing. So this shadow here might not play the best with every single trap and base combo. So there is that to expect. Actually, I want to make sure there's no white in that layer, and then I'll actually just lighten that up. Just because when you have like a dark color behind it and there is like white pixel data, it'll glow more than kind of like be a shadow. So it's got to be very, very dark so that any like darker bases aren't really going to like make it have this weird glow underneath. So that looks a little more like it's floating. I might even give it a heftier shadow. So that's not terrible. I think these crumbs need to like be clearly underneath of it though, for the illusion to really come through. So if there's like a bigger chunk that's kind of like clearly under this. Oh, we got a lot of layers. Sure, let's go with that. And then this is not lighting it because it's underneath. Now it is floating. And our shadow should get quite a bit darker. So we are properly occluded from the light now. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of things we can just kind of push and pull forevermore. And there comes a time when you gotta call it. I feel like we are getting close to that time. Because I do want to have my lunch break. And I'm going to kind of like maybe sit on this one, come back to it. After I've kind of like looked at it with fresh eyes. Because I think I've gotten decently far with it. Yeah, that's not terrible. I do want to try throwing that quill or the like pen nib onto it as a offering. It seems kind of interesting. Can I actually just steal it? Would that work? Let's grab that. Copy. And let's see, we're at the top here. Good enough. Paste. Let's rotate that. That did not work. No, do not apply that transformation. Let's put that in the folder first. And now we can rotate that. And shrink it down significantly. So like, I'm wondering if I should be like buried into the cheese a little bit. Let's actually like skew it. That's not the right skewing. Something like that. Well, we'll have to like paint the lighting on it a little differently so it fits into its new environment a little bit better. Yeah, something like that could be good. Offering up the quill tip or the nib. Yeah, won't even need a trap. The mouse will choke on the nib. Pretty much. Pretty much. It's interesting. I'll give it that. Alright, I'm going to toss this at the art team. See what they say. Alright. Well, let's see if they get back to me right away. Otherwise, I think I will wrap up. There is the option as well to enhance it further by putting like buttery kind of, oil or herbs or something onto it, but I would want the pen to kind of have those elements to it somehow if I were to kind of like do that. So like what I would potentially do would be to kind of like put like a knurling or something on like the grip portion, like the middle of the pen, and then like it's as if that was grated onto the cheese or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a start. Yeah, I might need to like come back to this and like take a look at it with fresh eyes to kind of like get to the final like landing point on it. But yeah. All right. Positive feedback from the art team so far. But yeah, I think yeah, I should probably take my lunch. It's past 2 o'clock. I usually take it at between 1 and 2. So I'm going to put the Larry link in the chat again, in case you missed it. And we'll actually watch the time lapse for both of these. So let's start with the plot hook and enjoy its creation. So just from start to finish, because we have the ability to do this, so why not? So early on we did kind of like, I think I was fed the idea of like the quill being a hook. Or maybe yeah, I think it was that like I had the same idea basically the same time someone shared it in the chat. And then like sharing this kind of like sketch with the team, we felt that the quill being like a feather quill was just overused, and we wanted to kind of like do something a little more, not the same kind of quill. So the idea of like a fountain pen, but then made out of like organic material, like pearl shell, that kind of thing, I think kind of like will add to where you find it. Looks like something that you could find in a sense. So I think that'll fit nicely with the area. It still kind of communicates this concept of a plot hook in a physical manifestation of the idea of like a story beat, right? So I think that's the best that one can do. I'm happy with it. Like the actual concept, I was like, I have no idea. So I'm glad we got something. Um, Hello, Addie. Welcome back. I am just about to head out, actually. We're just watching the time lapse while I kind of talk about the day, and then I'm going to go get lunch because I decided to kind of like go until I hit the point where I'm like, okay, I don't know what else I want to do with this. I know I want to tweak it, but it's better to kind of do that with fuel in me and fresh eyes. So, okay, that was the plot hook item. At least that's the placeholder name. But I feel like it'd be hard to do something else with the name there. I like plot hook. I didn't like it until I knew what it was. I was like, what the heck is a plot hook item that you collect and turn into cheese? And I think we got it, so I'm happy with that. Oh, well, thank you very much, Addie. And then here is the plotting paneer. And so this is the cheese that you make out of your plot hook ingredient. And so it's like a higher tier cheese, so I wanted it to be powerful looking. But I also wanted it to be very clearly paneer. Someone in the chat gave me the steepled finger concept, and I love that. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't think it would. In fact, I was very doubtful. And it was originally looking a little too praying hands like, but then after that suggestion, it was kind of more like, wait, no, we need it to be more devious and kind of like Smithers, release the hounds, kind of like, that kind of thing. And so that just kind of played with the idea of these hooks. Anyway, so I was like, well, yeah, I got to explore that now. So we did. And I'm happy with where it is kind of leading to. The first kind of just like, oh, that's like a block of paneer with like hooks carving off of it. It just wasn't as like full of interest and unique and weird and characteristic and whimsical. And so I shared the sketch of kind of like the steepled fingers with the art team. They like it. They just didn't think it was kind of like high tier enough. So that kind of influenced the plot hook item to be more ornate, have like gold bands on it, and then that way we can kind of like have it as if that item was chopped up and turned into rings for this cheesy hand. So that's the idea, the like thinking behind what the heck we created today. But pretty happy with where we got to. I was really like, I'm gonna struggle with this. So it's the exact right thing to take to Feedback Friday. I always have like a pretty good art day eventually. Like sometimes I start off where I'm struggling like crazy, but I always kind of end it where it's like, all right, I'm happy with where we got to. And Feedback Friday Art Edition really pushes me to kind of like do the weird challenging thing and like really figure it out because people are hanging out, they're watching, they give me great ideas. Um, you know, I guarantee that what we have here would not have been what would have been created if it wasn't done with you guys. So again, that's another reason why I really love doing it like this, because you just end up in a more interesting place. And if people hate it, I get to blame you all. It was your fault that I ended up creating these monstrosities. So you're welcome, and thank you. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap it today with that. I hope you enjoyed the stream and these strange, curious, devious items. And I look forward to you discovering them in game eventually. There's a lot that we're doing, so we're gonna be we are kind of like motoring along, um, but there will definitely be more creations that will be interesting and perhaps telling. But yeah, a lot more cool stuff to come for permanent area that will be coming out in time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. It should be Dave next week for Feedback Friday. Um, but yeah, until I see you next, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and happy hunting, everyone. I shall catch you all later. See you in probably 2 weeks. All right. Bye for now. Thank you very much. And yeah, always happy to have you hang out with me. I shall see you all later. And bye bye.